All right, wonderful. And we're back. So next up as our next speaker is Frank Dempsey, who's going to be talking about Frank's current visual observing programs. So Frank, what have you been up to lately?
Okay, thanks. Good question, Tom. So, let me start. So the title says it's Frank's observing programs, and that's because it's my personal situation. So anybody else here could do a similar presentation, have their own program of what they do, and it just matches my circumstances. So you see by the title, it's my visual observing program. So this answers Tom's question of what I've been up to for the past few years, and probably the next 10 years if I live that long. And so one of the programs I do is variable stars. So I do this most clear nights. So I'm starting this off with what's the thing that I do most often. And so a couple of charts here give some idea of what it's about. T Corona Borealis has been a fairly famous variable star in the past year, with a lot of people waiting for it to erupt as a nova. And then I picked another one, which is called SS Cygni on the right. So I look at these pretty often when I can. But it's basically amounts to recording some numbers. And so here you see my, you okay here? All right, thank you. Just see a bunch of numbers I put into a notebook, and I eventually put them online in a database. And it's not really exciting, not much to holler about. So I'll move on to the next one. So lunar observing is another thing I do a lot of the time, because moon is in the sky quite a lot of the time. And so I showed on the right a couple of sheets. One is a list of the some targets, and I put on one of my observation sheets, and take some time to do it. And I thought what I might do here is because instead of putting up a slide full of text and images, throw in a picture once in a while. So I decided maybe I'll put in a picture of one of the telescopes that I use for these projects. And so here's one of my scopes I use for this project. For an 8-inch f10 Newtonian, does a pretty good job on lunar observing, gives really high magnification. So it's really good. And I thought I'd mention too, in case you detect there's a bit of a homemade flavor to some of these telescope images. Some of them are actually made in Canada. Okay, so I thought I might mention that. Okay, so a couple of images here show a bit more detail about it. The RASC's program is called the Isabel Williamson Lunar Observing Program. It's a really excellent program. It's a lot of targets, a lot of challenging objects in it. And so I've mostly finished it, except for a few challenge objects, which I may never actually see, but it's fun to observe these. And the other program I follow as well is the Astronomical League's program. So I'll be showing a lot of projects that I follow with the Astronomical League, and here's their so-called Lunar 2 observing program, but it's also a list of targets. So I just follow these lists of targets as things to observe, and that's what I do. That's what I find interesting and amusing. Another one is sunspot observing, and here I just picked a picture from a nice government image of some sunspots. Most people know what sunspots looks like anyway, but the result of my observations is just more numbers I put onto a notepad. So I just took an image of my a notepad sheet on the right-hand side there. And in terms of telescopes, the image I chose to illustrate it is my 80 millimeter refractor. So that's a good size for size of a telescope for sunspot observing. So I just pull that out each day, point it toward the sun, and get a quick count of sunspots, and put them into my notebook, and eventually submit them online. And yes, end of that one. But I've been doing this for years, probably decades. So I highly recommend it as one of your projects you might find interesting. Planets is another thing. So I put in a few examples here of planet sketches that I've made. And so these are fairly recent. I started doing this a lot this winter, and we've only had a few clear skies this winter when we've had good planetary viewing conditions. And to get good planetary viewing conditions means we need good seeing conditions. And so the few times that we've had when the sky is clear, most of the time I can point a telescope at Jupiter or Mars and see just a rolling mass of light, and not really a good object. But once in a while, a few rare nights, seeing has actually been pretty good. So I started making sketches. Went on the right-hand side of Jupiter. I decided in this case to try to record the thing that's called the Great Red Spot. And so you see on the left-hand side, it's really fading. So I tried to make a drawing to record what I saw, because I remember this good half a century ago when I built that. You see that telescope on the lower left? That's a 6-inch f10 reflector, and when I built that about half a century ago, great red spot was really distinct and big and red, and now it's fading. I can just barely see it. So it's fine to say, Frank, your eyes are getting old and so on. Yeah, I know, but it's not quite that way. So I know this so-called red spot is really fading into the appearance of the zones on either side of the belt. It's really fading, and so I thought I'll try to actually record the colors that I see. So I went to Staples and bought a set of colored pencils and tried to make this colored sketch you see on the upper right of Jupiter, to try to record this so-called red spot a bit more for my own records of just what I find to be a record of the observation. Similar thing with Mars on the lower right. You may detect some color, because in the past couple of months, Mars has got a really nice color. It's a really nice red color with no filters. It really shows up. And this isn't really an excellent apparition, except that, as Dennis pointed out, it's nearly overhead. And so there's no dust storms on it yet. So it's this red color really shines through in any telescope, and including mine. But so I started with just pencil on paper drawings, and evolved them to become what I think are little color diagrams, color sketches. Venus is another interesting example, because I started to record it. I realized it's as Dennis pointed out, it's zooming down toward the sun, and its phase has been changing noticeably from gibbous toward crescent toward really thin crescent. This one on picture, a little sketch I made on the right, is a couple of nights ago. But I decided what I'm going to do in this coming apparition, which starts at the end of the month with Venus appearing in the morning sky, is use a reticle eyepiece, which is graduated, so I can measure the actual diameter of what I see in the eyepiece. I'm going to make a set of sketches whenever I see Venus of the phase as I see it, as I see it, and sketch it, and the diameter. So you see that marked off in the diagram in the lower right-hand side, which is a calendar for the whole year upcoming. So you see that the top upper right shows when Venus is very close to its inferior conjunction later this month, and then appears in the morning sky as a thin crescent, and gets smaller in diameter and thicker phase. So I decided I'm going to do this as a sketching project for the rest of this year. I actually did this when I was a teenager, and I thought it's a really interesting way to follow Venus's phases. And so that's what I'm going to do as one of my observing projects. Another one that I've been doing is a lot of deep sky targets. And here's one example, a photocopy from the Observer's Handbook. And so I didn't intend you can see this, but if you're an IARC member and you have the Observer's Handbook, you can just look this up. It's just a photocopy. So it's what I photocopy onto a sheet of paper that I put into a 3-ring binder. That's how I choose to do it. And you see one of my example sketches here on the lower right, and whichever object it is, faint fuzz patch of some sort, that's what it is. So it takes a lot of planning to get these. And here's several sheets of that particular list of objects, deep sky gems, 3 pages. A little over 100 objects. Takes a lot of careful planning to get them all, because some are in the southern sky, some are pretty faint things in the southern spring sky, and if it's too close to moonlight or twilight or polluted light pollution in the southern sky, then it takes some really careful planning to actually get these observations. So that takes some effort. Another one that I want to point out, because it's a sort of fun project, is this open star clusters. And here's another page from Observer's Handbook. I actually did the similar project with the Astronomical League a few years ago, and I decided that was a really fun project, so I'm recommending it. I think if you have hassle with light pollution and you don't like wasting a lot of time looking for faint galaxies in a light polluted sky, you might like looking for open star clusters. And so as I said, I did this project with the Astronomical League's list a few years ago, and I highly recommend it. So now I'm going to work through this list as I get a chance. Telescope here is a 5-inch Newtonian. It's a wide field. It's a 5-inch f5 Newtonian, so it's a wide field. So it does a really nice job on open star clusters. But I'd have to say any telescope you have will do a nice job with open star clusters. So that's one example. Herschel 400 is another example. It's also an Astronomical League project. 400 objects on this list, and I wasn't going to present it here because I finished it about a year ago. and I thought it was finished. And just in the past couple of weeks, when I was putting this together, I thought, here's this binder full of 400 observations on 200 sheets of paper, and why don't I compile it, submit it for the certificate as I can get for it, and pack the binder on the shelf and leave it, forget about it, and get on with the other projects. And so I was doing all this, and I realized, what the heck did I do here? Somehow I didn't get an observation, so I thought it was finished, but I'm not. So I've got to do one more. So it's back on my current list of projects to do, because I got to get this one little object in a galaxy in Virgo. So okay, it's now a current project. So I mentioned it's a dark sky requirement, and that means that I got to pack up a vehicle, I got to drive some distance, I got to really plan the night carefully, and it's quite a lot of effort to do this. So I've marked off some of these projects that require dark sky. Here's another example here, and so if you don't want to spend a lot of effort, trouble, freeze your fingers and toes and so on, then you may not want to bother with these ones. But anyway, I'm just listing off what I do as some of my observing projects. And so I'll keep an eye on the time here, but this is just another example that's a photocopy from the RASC Observer's Handbook, and I'm going to work through all of these. Some of these are pretty darn faint, so it's going to be quite a challenge. So the telescope here I'm illustrating is a 12.5-inch Newtonian. I may have pointed out my C11. Did I back it up there? Yes, that telescope is a C11, and that's a very good telescope, I find, for doing portable deep sky work. C11 can handle all of these objects on the NGC list that are on the Herschel 400 program. They go to as faint as about 12, in some case 13th magnitude, and for border forest skies, that's quite a tall order to get them, but the C11 can handle it. So I find it to be a very good compromise for a reasonable size aperture and a portable telescope that I can handle by myself in the dark. So so some telescopes are a bit bigger, and I'm not going to take them on a portable. There's just too much good projects to build a telescope maybe, but not so portable. So here's another one, another photocopy from the Observer's Handbook. It's another good list I'm going to work through. They call it a deep sky selection from year to far. So I'm going to work on that one too. In this case, it's a 10-inch Newtonian, also does a good job. So globular clusters, here's another page from the Observer's Handbook. And the telescope in this case I've selected is a 5-inch or 120 or 127 millimeter, whichever it is, celestron refractor, but does a good job on globular clusters. So it's just another list of objects I'll be looking at whenever. Asterisms is a fun project, so I recommend that if you want something to look in the sky, download this list from the Astronomical League. It's just astroleague.org, and all our observing lists, probably 100 of them, if not more, are free for download. But this is interesting because some are visible by eye, some binoculars, and some telescope. So you might find this interesting. So I've illustrated here a pair of 70 millimeter celestron binoculars, which are fairly common. A lot of people have them. Double stars. So Astronomical League list here again. I list this as one of my current projects. It's almost finished. I've got maybe half a dozen left to finish on the list of approximately 100 stars. You might say, oh, wait a minute, the RSC has a good double star list. It's called the, it may not have been named officially yet as the Blake Nancarroll list of double stars, but I did it a few years ago, did it when it was first introduced. So it was really good, very interesting, fun project to do. From any old backyard, you don't need a dark sky. And here I'm illustrating the 5-inch, or I think it's called 127 millimeter Mac telescope, Cassegrain Mac telescope. So it's a fun little telescope they use for double stars. So are the refractors. But anyway, I finished the RASC list, and now I'm working through the Astronomical League list because double stars are fun. So I think they're a fun project to work through. And as another extension, here's another photocopy from the RASC handbook of colored double stars. So it's also a nice list, and I've illustrated some binoculars on the right. So you could pick any binoculars you have, and some small ones, big ones, whichever, they ought to do a good job on colored double stars because they are fun to look at in different size instruments. So I find it to be a fun project to do. Okay, so binocular double stars is another list with the Astronomical League, and it's got its own challenges. It's fun to do with binoculars. So here you see again my 70 millimeter binoculars, which I mentioned are fairly common. A lot of people have them, but I find that list to be fun to do too, because they're fairly easy to find on star hopping if you're good at star hopping with charts. And so it's a fun project to for me to do. I'm not here to recommend that you do it, but if you do want a nice, easy project to do, it's a fun project. Dark nebulae. It's one I started this past summer, and you need a really, really darn good dark sky. And so I only started doing this because I've been going for each year, past 10 years or more, to Manitoulin Island, where I can find really good dark skies in September. And so dark nebulae. So I started to do a few of this list, and it's quite an interesting, fun challenge. Don't bother wasting your time doing it from your GTA area backyard. But this telescope I illustrated is a 5-inch Newtonian wide field. So a good wide field telescope does a good job on it. So carbon stars, another fun one. This is a list from the RASC handbook. I recently finished the Astronomical League's list of carbon stars too. So it's a fun list to work through, because they're interesting to find a star in your star field and see what's that really bright red or orange star. They really stand out in a lot of cases. So it's a fun little project to do. So I'm finishing off just about here with very interesting feature that's been appearing in the Observer's Handbook the past few years or a bit more, called the feature star field. And this year's handbook has the area around Perseus. And so these authors, Chris Beckett and Randall Rosenfeld, do a pretty good job on listing a lot of interesting features in the area of this constellation. And so I decided in the past couple of years, these are really good things to work through. So some are really easy and some are a bit more challenging. Some are easy naked eye type clusters and binocular clusters. Others are fainter galaxy and nebulae that you have to really work at to find. But it's an interesting project to illustrate, which is I'm working on. So let's see. Final one I wanted to finish off with this, because this is a really darn nice, fun list to work through. So I highly recommend it. So this is another photocopy from a page from the RASC handbook called Wide Field Wonders. And so I started working through this one last year as well. And so it's really fun, because each of those clusters that I work through, when you're at the right ascension range, and that means that if I was on, say, Manitoulin Island last September, and it means that the part of the sky that's in the evening sky might be 16 to 20 hour of right ascension range. So some objects are not in the sky all the time, but the half a dozen or so I picked, each one I looked at, I thought, wow, this is really darn nice. It's a really enjoyable thing to look at, these objects. So here I've illustrated a wide field pair of binoculars, 100 millimeter binoculars, but you don't need that. So I just want to illustrate it, but these are just really nice to do. So that's why I'm finishing off with this project. So I just mentioned there are some other projects to do besides all of what I've illustrated. I'm currently working on. There's asteroids, Sirius B, a double star Sirius B is an interesting challenge to look for, and there's Lunar 1000 challenge and a whole bunch of others. And all these resources here have more targets to look for in a telescope visually. So this is my future after I finish the current projects I'm working on. Okay, so just in summary, I just want to point out that the only summary to point out is that it's an ongoing thing. I'm doing it every clear night that I have. So I'm going to keep an eye on the weather. Don't look at that weather chart in the lower left. It's not a very pretty one, because I picked a forecast chart for right now, and it's not a pretty thing to see a big low overhead. But you see the picture on the right shows daytime clear blue skies. So that's what I'm waiting for. So that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to watch for next clear night. And all of those things I've showed you in the slides are what I'm working on. So that's it. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Frank. Any questions from the audience? Oh,
thanks, Frank. Shouldn't leave the audience with the impression that they have to have 23 different telescopes to embark on this.
No, it's a good point. It's a good point, because I should have said you can do most of these with one telescope, like say a common 8-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain could do a lot of these. It's not a wide field instrument. It's not a super high magnification or high aperture, but a simple 8-inch. I'd even recommend for most people, an ideal telescope is a 5-inch. but you could use one telescope to do quite a lot of those for sure. But what your question
and,
was?
yeah, the question, just as a curiosity, because these lists or the certifications, there'll often be objects or targets that are common between the lists. Not all, but those collisions will happen. Just if you were putting in for two different certifications, both of which had the same object on them, would you do two separate observations, or would you submit the same observation?
So the answer to that is that the answer is doesn't happen on the RASC because just for one example, the Deep Sky Gems I mentioned, that's a list compiled by David Levy, and he chose ones that were not on the Messier list, not on the RASC list called Finest NGC. So he chose ones that were not on them, and there's many, many hundreds of others. So he compiled that list to be not excluding those ones. Yeah, so no collisions. It does happen with the Herschel 400, so there were some overlaps. But in a lot of cases, I decided to observe it anyway. And I'm re-observing, I mentioned the lunar targets, I'm re-observing them just because they're fun. So the answer to your question is there's very few, if any, exclusions. You have a question, Samuel?
Yeah. So, Frank, thanks a lot. Frank, how many telescopes have you made?
How many have I made? Probably half a dozen, but I'll admit I used to think my wife used to try to convince me to have too many telescopes. But really, all those telescopes I showed you have more, many more. I love them all. They're really fun to use, really enjoyable to use, and some are, as I mentioned, are ideal for planetary viewing. Some are ideal for wide field viewing. I'd have to tell you,
You made 6.
more, probably more, but I haven't tried to count them.
Did you buy the mirror or did you make them?
I've made some mirrors. I showed a couple. I showed you that big 12.5 inch. I made that one. The first one I showed you was the 8-inch f10. Well, let me tell you this. I'm not here to promote telescope making. That's a whole separate topic. But when you spend many hours grinding and polishing the mirror and get the figure just right, and many hours testing the mirror and getting it just right, and then you think it's just right. That telescope is just right, and then you get it luminized and you put it in the telescope. The view through that telescope, it's just phenomenal compared to any other telescope. It just feels so nice because all the hours are put into making it just the right perfect figure. And so it means that when you look at a really high definition target like a planet, the view is phenomenal because it's my own little baby. So that's why I got off on a tangent, of course. But the answer to your question was, yes, I've made a few telescopes and I have bought a few too so I love them all. I love using them all. Talking to the mic, okay. Okay, I'm finished. Are there any other questions?
Any more questions from the audience?
What was the name of the website to track the eclipse times and the estimation of how it would look?
Tennis and that, but timeanddate.org.
Oh, sorry.
Timeanddate.com.
Look up Toronto and they have a link to it.
Timeanddate.com.
Yeah, I was just wondering for your solar observation, were you using a filter or what type of filter were you using?
Yes, solar filter. So that's 80 millimeter refractor, and the filter was a Kendrick filter. So common commercial filter just snapped onto the end of that 80 millimeter refractor. So the 80 millimeter refractor is a really handy little telescope. I use that for the Venus sketches that I showed too, but it's just simply snaps on to the end of the tube. So common commercial filter, that's what I used.
Well, you've mentioned that a lot of your projects were fun. So in your opinion, which of those lists would you describe as most fun?
Very good question. The most fun list is the one called, what was it called? What did I call it? Wide Field Wonders? Yes, Wide Field Wonders. This is the one that's the most fun. And this is one I recommend everybody ought to do if you have a telescope and you're looking for something to look at. I found this to be, from my personal situation, the most enjoyable fun because all the objects I've looked at on it are really neat. And so I look at them, each one, and think, wow, that's a really beautiful sight. And it's fairly easy to find in a lot of cases. They're not like really faint fuzz patches that you have to search around and be sure if you're looking at it or not. So this one called Wide Field Wonders is my favorite. Okay.
And we've got some questions online.
Actually, not questions, but a few comments. Eric Briggs says, thanks for describing that truss tube telescope. Fender 90s says, can't wait for the warmer days to come so I can get out more. Unfortunately, I don't have access to the sky from my apartment in downtown, so my DSO setup with a mono camera has been sitting around for some time. I thought you might want to give him some advice.
Sure. Great question, because a lot of these targets that I've chosen can be viewed from the city, from any urban light polluted area, including where I live, although it's not as bad as some other people's areas. But double stars, the carbon stars, and open clusters are excellent, and the planets are excellent targets for an urban environment where you don't need a dark sky. Lunar for sure. Yep. Good point. Lunar and solar and planets. Basically solar system. And this one called Wide Field Wonders, and double stars and carbon stars and open clusters.
All right. Any more questions from the audience? No? Okay. Frank, thank you very much. And we're going to go to fun facts while we set up for our last presentation of the evening.